What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Off Tackle with John Fina show. I'm your host, Joe Miller, and I'm here, of course, with the man, the myth, the legend, 11-year Buffalo Bill, 12-year veteran in the NFL, John Fina himself. John, how you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing all right. All things considered, Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It was I was a little tired today. It was an interesting weekend. It was an interesting week. There was a lot, as you know, of stuff that went on just with the Mafia and around town. And there was a great party at Soho, the homecoming party on Friday night put on by the Cold Front Report, and then the skating party for charity by Bill's Mafia Babes, Poncho's Army, and Jay Spence the King on Saturday. And then obviously we got to Hammer's Lot Sunday morning at 6:45 a.m. And had we been 5 minutes later, we wouldn't have got in. It was crazy, like the whole weekend. And then obviously the game. We couldn't get out of there forever because they shut down Abbott. And it was just a parking lot. It was crazy. But no, how was your game day experience? What'd you do this weekend? What'd you do? Did you do anything good? Anything special?
No, I didn't. Honestly, I like to watch the game kind of alone. You know, the aloner, the better off I am. I take copious notes. You know, I'm just kind of following the game, and I just like it that way. There's a few people I'll watch the game with, but this weekend wasn't one of them.
No, I'm the same way. I love watching the game with McKenna, my daughter. I love watching the game with my dad, a couple specific friends, but I'm not very much even before I got into content creation, and we didn't plan to talk about this, but even before I got into content creation, I was the guy that if there was like 5 or 6 people in the room and the Bills were playing bad, they'd ask me why. What's happening, Joe? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, the wheels are coming off. Leave me alone. Let me be pissed off over here by myself. Like, so I'm the same way. I yell at the TV. It just, I remember one. Here you go. We'll get the show started in a second. My daughter, McKenna, was 3 years old. And I don't know if one of your kids was a little more advanced than the other ones. Like McKenna was my kid that like was talking early, was walking early, like could carry conversations early, knew stuff early. She was behind me in my man cave playing something, and the Bills were on Sunday Night Football playing the Patriots. And I believe it was one of the ones where we were winning. And then Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think, threw an interception, and I yelled, "Oh shit!" Right? And then all of a sudden, in the back of the room, I hear McKenna going, "Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit!" And so I immediately leaned over the couch and I went, ship, baby, ship. And she started going, oh, ship.
Because everybody always yells, oh, ship. Oh, captain, my captain, right?
That's an honest to God true story right there. True story. So your game day experience was basically you by yourself taking copious notes. Let me get the yard work, if you will, taken care of first. So everybody, welcome into the show. A bunch of people in already. A lot of you guys in the chat. If you're not in the YouTube section, jump over to YouTube, jump over to Buffalo Rumblings, click on the link. There's a lot of great conversation that happens there. Also, a good reason is because we are Super Chat Live. What that means is if you are on YouTube, you can ask John a question. You can, which it says right there, please ask John a question. You can also make a comment. And the easiest way to get our attention is through a Super Chat, because it's going to come up highlighted and colored. I cannot guarantee you that in our conversation, I'm going to see all the comments or the questions. We're not ignoring you, I promise. So if you want to get a question in, please do that. But we are glad to have you here. But let's start here. Going into this game, now I did a pregame show called Time to Shine, had a lot of fun, brought Bill's Mafia members on. I think you were around for that a little bit. And it was a lot of, and we had great expectations, specifically from this offense. What were your expectations, thoughts kind of going into this game beforehand?
Similar to yours, Joe. I mean, I expected more than what we saw. That's for sure. I had the Bills winning by 8-11, somewhere around there. I really felt like we were poised to get it done. And I'm disappointed. And I think right after the game, I was kind of angry at some of the things that I saw. And then I settled down. And then last night, I started pulling up what I would consider lowlights. And, I watch film a little differently. So I watched the same play about 9 times. I'm watching footwork and everything like that. My wife's asking me, what the hell are you doing? This is like the old days. And I said, well, Joe means a lot to me. So, and the Bills Mafia deserves some real assessment of play. But I'm disappointed. And my expectations were high. But I'll say they continue to be high.
Yeah.
17 is a long season. We're 0-1. We own it. The players own it. It's now a function of how do you respond? How do you get better?
Yeah. Yesterday on my show, I I started the show with talking about how I've been through enough home openers, at least have gone to them, or even like seen enough first games of the season, that 1-0 is such a different feeling than 0-1. It's a really weird. There's just a feeling of, no matter how bad your team is, if you win your first game, New Orleans Saints against the Packers, the Saints fans are flying high today because they've got gigantic hope and expectation for the rest of the year. They're 1-0. They beat the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. Meanwhile, the Packer fans are in the basement, like the wheels have come off. Does that happen with the players as well, or is it just like, we're going to bury it, like they talk about, like we're going to spend one day watching film, we're going to bury it, on to the next game?
Yeah, well, they won't bury it until Wednesday morning practice, I'm guessing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, this just doesn't go away right away, and it won't for Bills Mafia either. And I troll the Twitterverse a little bit and read everybody's comments, and some are outlandish and vitriolic, and everybody needs to get fired, or I called this right, we should have drafted that position, and
right.
That's all well and good. The players right now, they're a little, I think, a little shell shocked. Well, particularly on offense, and in the punt room in particular. But by and large, these are grown men, and they understand why they're here and what they have to do. And there's a feeling of, holy cow, we went out and laid an egg, and they'll get over it. I think they'll deliver.
Did you by chance catch any of the pressers, whether yesterday or today?
That was going to be the next thing I looked at last night, but I really didn't want to listen to them. A lot of times, they're just going to tell you what you already saw or what you already felt, and they're going to be vanilla enough that they protect people. I don't like it when management or coaches call out particular players.
Yeah.
So I think that, I saw it with my own eyes.
Sure.
Just as you did, and maybe even saw a little bit more because I watched it on television. I got the benefit of replay and things of that nature. And trust me, they probably watched that game. It was not a fun room to be in offensively, and then in the breakout rooms, it was rough. Yeah, and if it wasn't, then I think there's a problem.
Yeah, I can tell you this. I'm not going to spoil it for you. We'll move on here in a second. Go back and watch. I only caught 3 pressers that are on YouTube or the Bills channel, the Bills app, and they doubled them up. So one is Allen and Beasley, and Josh Allen looked like somebody kicked his dog, and literally was talking like somebody kicked his dog. Beasley, at one point, they asked him about confidence, and in about the most somber, disheveled, conversational way, he was like, "We haven't lost any confidence," and it was just like, okay. But more than that, the cherry on top is McDermott. He didn't call any players. McDermott is brilliant and very good about not calling out coaches, taking ownership, taking blame. The media tried to trap him and corner him. He did a very good job of managing and navigating that. But I want you to go back and watch that, maybe even after we do our show, because he was more dejected than I probably have ever seen him. He was not happy with the outcome of that football game. And by the outcome, primarily the stuff that we're probably going to talk about, things that he saw, decisions his coaches made, how plays were executed. Because I said last night, it's one thing to tell a player that doesn't have the ability they didn't execute. Well, no, they didn't execute. They can't do that. This team is full of people that can execute the plays they want them to execute. And yesterday, they just didn't do it. But let's start with the positives.
Okay.
Let's start with the positives. I'll let you go first. Give me a couple things that in your mind, and if you want to expound upon them, that's fine, that went well. And obviously the defense is going to be first, but a couple things, whether it's on offense or defense, what went well for you?
Well, particularly the defensive front four. I watched very closely just the get off and the physical nature of the way they attacked the offensive line. We'd have liked more sacks or maybe a little bit more production, but they were resetting the line of scrimmage in a lot of instances. That was an incredibly active group. And it got me thinking, wow, this game, this defense of ours, they give us a chance. Mm-hmm. I start thinking, my mind goes wild. I start thinking about the Ravens. They were all defense when they won the Super Bowl.
Right.
And that's okay. They say defense wins championships. I'm not saying they've arrived, but there's a lot to look at on the defensive front four. All of the linebackers played downhill, played aggressive.
It was great.
Taron Johnson popped to me. Yeah. He was all over the field. Yeah. Until the fourth quarter, there was a reception over on I think it was the defensive left. Okay. Let's not take one successful play by their offense and start shunning the defense for what they did yesterday. And It was impressive. I thought Tremaine Edmonds looked outstanding. I'll say this. I think that our young guys on the defensive front and our old guys on the defensive front did a great job. They should go back. And we talked about this the last time. Learn from other players. And there are some guys that played for Pittsburgh up front, like Basham should be looking at Melvin Ingram and saying, that's me. That's my body type, right?
Yes.
That's what I need to do. That's how I need to play. I'll tell you the player of the game for them on defense. Most people would say Minka Fitzpatrick or TJ Watt, but it wasn't. It was Cameron Hayward.
Yeah.
And he absolutely destroyed our offense, offensive line.
Same thing he did last year in the first half.
He was unstoppable. Harrison Phillips, Zimmer, Starr. Take a look at that film. Borrow, steal, rob. The highest form of flattery is imitation.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was really impressed. How'd you feel about the defense? I mean, that's a huge positive.
I'm over the conversation, and you're on, as you like to call it, and you've got me saying it now too, the Twitterverse. You're on the Twitterverse enough in the offseason and have seen people just pound Tremaine Edmonds, a kid that's relatively young, and how long are we going to give him? And at some point we got to give up. Why did they pick up the 5th-year option? All that crap. I was, he led the league, has led the league He's led the team in tackles the last 2 years. So he's active. He's a big physical player. We obviously know that last year he was injured. He was dealing with a shoulder injury. Side to side, great. We know he's got great body length, great speed. And we've seen that in his career, east to west. He's done a very good job generally trailing the play. Once whoever it is gets past the line of scrimmage. I loved all that to say this. I absolutely loved seeing him go north and south and attacking the line of scrimmage. To me, that was everything that I wanted to see from him, and hope that only continues to grow through the season for me. I agree with you. As much as we didn't hear the names, that we wanted to hear getting called for sacks and other things like that, I thought the defensive line and the front seven was very aggressive. I thought they gave the defensive backs a chance to win.
Minus a couple of successful runs, they did a great job shutting down the run.
Right. And then
I expected Najee Harris to be more productive, and he had, I think, 2 runs that were notable. Yeah. Otherwise, the pursuit, I just loved how they reestablished the line of scrimmage. It was great to see.
Yeah, the run, shutting down the run was fantastic. Najee Harris is going to be a good player in the NFL. And clearly going into the season, it was such a backwards game. Everything that we thought, the Bills offense is gonna roll. The defense is gonna struggle against the run, play a lot of bend but break between the 20s, or bend but don't break between the 20s. And we saw the complete opposite. They shut down the run, like that. They shut them out first half completely, and the offense. We'll get there, right? And offensively,
the safeties. I think the safeties played well.
Yes.
Poyer and Hyde, pardon me.
Yeah. Yep.
And, in particular, I thought McKenzie returning kicks looked very good. I mean, even aside from, he made a decision there where he probably should have fair caught it, come up and played the fair catch. But otherwise, I think it looks promising in the return game.
So the stadium was electric. The stadium was absolutely electric. They played that memorial video, and I think it was in sync across the country at every stadium, because they started showing live cut-ins from other stadiums. So I think all 32 teams, all 60, or not 16, I guess it'd be 14, or maybe whatever the number is, the 1:00 games were all synced at the same time. And then they did a flyover. So the crowd was already electric. We get the ball. He comes out with that 71-yard return, and the place was going nuts. It was unbelievable. He played well. He had that other 41-yard return. I loved the moment because it's a learning experience to me. He got the one punt. It was towards the tunnel end zone. It was towards my side. And he looked up, called for a fair catch, caught the ball, looked up and realized nobody was within 15 yards of him. And he was upset at himself.
Yeah. And that was visible.
Yeah.
And that comes with experience.
Right.
And it's hard. I don't know if you ever fielded a punt.
No.
They had the offensive line doing it once when I was there. I felt like a cow on ice. I had vertigo. I think I fell over twice. It was ridiculous. It's a very, very challenging thing to do. And then think about looking up and maintaining your balance and finding the ball, and then having the wherewithal to understand, that 9 guys.
Yep.
conceivably 10 guys are bearing down on you, with the weight of an entire team.
Yeah.
So,
I love that. I don't know how they do that. Andre Roberts was great at it. Andre Roberts, there's guys that would, so I played baseball and you peek, right? I mean, there's ways to field balls and look up and look down and your body kind of knows where it is. And Andre Roberts would never look up and look back. He'd always keep his head up. And that first cut after he caught the ball was always right. Somehow he knew and could feel where the guy was, if he was coming from his left or coming from his right. If he was coming from his right, then he would dip him. I don't know how he did it. I don't know how those guys do it. And Andy would catch punts and receive kicks overhead. Like,
they're a little bit like fighter pilots, something I'm just not going to do. They're pulling serious G's out there. That's the equivalency.
That's absolutely great. But no, and offensively, there wasn't as much as we wanted. We're not happy, I should say, or pleased with the showing. Dude, Gabe Davis looked like Gabe Davis. He looked great in that football game. He continues to shine on a team yesterday where everybody seemed down. Stephon Diggs, as we saw, was off kind of by himself, kind of like coaching himself up before he went back and tried to be a captain to everybody else and bring them up. And Gabe Davis is just out there catching difficult passes. That's just what the dude does.
They got slapped in the face. And probably, people say wake up game, things of that nature, reset, what have you. And there's a large number of people who are very large people on the offense who are taking stock of themselves and the way they played.
Yeah, for sure.
I wasn't disappointed with the receiver core, frankly. I mean, there were maybe a couple drops. I really thought that Sanders should have had that ball. That was in his hands. That's a catch you need to make. He did make some other good catches. So, how much can you actually complain? So I'm okay with the receivers. Dawson Knox played well.
Great.
I didn't focus on his blocking, but, out in space, catching the ball, he did great. I mean, what do you think of the receivers?
There were some unfortunate drops. Josh was a little off as far as that goes. There was the one ball that he threw to Diggs that Diggs was kind of falling backwards. And I said to my dad at first, I was like, I think he alligator armed it. Like he was afraid somebody was coming. And then they showed the replay on the board and his arms were fully extended. He didn't. The ball was just out of his reach. There was just a lot of weird drops. Beasley had a couple drops. I'll say this positive about Beasley. He has a great knack, obviously, for getting open, which we know that part. The getting open piece is phenomenal. But what I love about Cole Beasley is a lot of times guys try to juke too much or try to do too much when they're either bracketed by defenders or there's a defender on them. And Beasley literally just darts forward every time and gets that last 4 yards. And I love that about him. Those last 3 or 4 yards that he gets when he just dives forward is big when you're talking about getting 10 yards for a new set of downs. Like he does that super, super well. I thought they played okay. The drops were unfortunate. It was more drops than we've seen in a game, probably in all of 2020. I don't think they dropped that many balls in a single game all of 2020, but it was great. Yeah, it is what it is. They got work to do.
Now, do we get to the hard part now?
Well, hang on.
Do we keep talking about what we liked?
You brought up and mentioned the big guys. So EB is asking this question, and it's not a super chat, which is fine, but I saw it and it caught my attention. John, last week we discussed, and I'm not a part of this, so I don't know what he's talking about, players eating at halftime during games. Can you pull back the curtain on the 90s squad's halftime eating habits? Thanks, brother. What is this about?
It was filet mignon and potatoes au gratin. We're just no. I have literally never seen anybody eat at halftime other than maybe, back in the days, it was a Power Bar, but you wouldn't eat that garbage. Sorry, Power Bar.
So much for that sponsor.
So much for that sponsor. I always kept a handful of bananas that I'd bring from a morning meal. And if I was starting to feel like I might be getting tight, I might power down a banana, but no, I don't think anybody eats at halftime. If they do now, I don't know. You only have 12 minutes, right? So
right, 12,
some of these away games, you could barely make it to the locker room to use the urinal. You don't have time to eat anything. I think I've always felt better about playing on an empty stomach, not empty, but I didn't eat probably for 4 hours, 3 hours before the game at least.
Yeah. Two things. I had somebody yesterday, I was at the game, that wanted to buy me a beer. And they're like, halftime, meet us at, section whatever. I'm in 313 row 1. They're like, meet us at 126. and we'll buy you a beer. And I'm like, well, you better get in line now. They're like, we're already in line. I'm like, okay, check number one. And then I was literally telling them, there's only 12 minutes. And they're like, what do you mean 12 minutes? I was like, halftime's only 12 minutes long. Like,
where you been since like what, 1997 or?
I'm gonna walk down there. I'm gonna grab my beer from you. I'm gonna hug you, say thanks, and walk back to my seat. Like, there's no time, and I'm not gonna have a chance, obviously to hit the restroom.
And you're gonna be down $18 too. So.
Right. But thank you. I mean, I appreciate the beer. What's interesting about what you said about eating at halftime, and I don't know how much you were paying attention or watching to the Bills when Willis McGahee was on the team, but Willis at one point in time said something about not feeling he was ill or he was feeling nauseous because he was so hungry, and somebody on the sideline had Quiznos, and it became a big thing in the Buffalo Bills message board that he had a Quiznos sub on the sideline or at halftime. And then obviously Marshawn, what is it with our running backs? Marshawn Lynch would eat Skittles, right? And he did it with Seattle too, and then actually turned into a sponsorship for him because he would eat Skittles all the time.
Yeah, I don't really consider eating Skittles. I mean, if you're going for that sugar rush, I know that we used to, variety of things before the game. Honey was a good one. We take those packets of honey or keep a little honey bear up in your locker and squirt a little honey in. But no, I mean, we no time to eat. And I'd be honest with you. I mean, I wish college football would go to the 12-minute half.
Yeah.
I mean, college football is just unbearable how long the games are. And, with the access to technology now, your guys up in the sky, if they're not reading the defenses and understanding how they're reacting to motion and alignment and what their substitution packages are, looking from the offensive, the defensive point of view, then you're not going to get that much accomplished with that extra 8 minutes, but you probably increase your viewership.
Yeah, I agree. College football it's funny because they've done so much to make the NFL game more efficient. I mean, I think back to when you played and there shortly after when team would score, commercial break, and then they do the extra point commercial, or no, the team score extra point commercial break, kickoff commercial break, and then they come back to the offense. It's like, good God, like, can we just get to the game already? Like,
I think probably they just raised the price of advertising,
which is smart if you think about it. But let's transition now to just some things that, if we're going to title this section, things that need to be addressed. And before we do, in my thoughts today, it felt to me yesterday as I was kind of like the hangover, it felt like this was a continuation a little bit of what we saw in the AFC Championship game, or even a little bit in that Ravens game. I mean, because if you think about the Ravens game in the offense, they weren't exactly the Josh Allen that we're used to seeing in the offense. We know what happened in that championship game. And then obviously, it continued through to the regular season. It just felt, the whole thing felt weird.
Yeah. It did. It felt weird. I'm not going to talk about last season. That's dead and buried.
Dead and buried, yeah.
You don't want to compare yourself to where you've been or how things went. But I'll say this. I mean, Josh, I think we're probably 4 passes minimum that weren't just bad. They were terrible.
Yeah.
That swing pass out to the left hit the ground like 8 feet in front of, I think, the running back. I can't recall. And then
it was Beasley. Well, unless we're talking about a different one. So that happened on my side of the field. It was Beasley, and I can't remember who the other wide receiver was. There was one defender on him. So Josh was trying to rush it.
Yeah, and the long ball.
Yeah, Josh was trying to rush that throw and missed him. But yeah, the long ball he was way off target on.
Way off. Yeah. I mean, completely uncatchable. When he did have time, there were a couple instances where I'm like, you got to get rid of the ball.
Yeah.
And he didn't. He held it. That one sack, that was on Josh for sure, where he stepped up and just kind of hung there and then got pulled down in place. That was Josh's sack, not the offensive line. However, I will say when the protection was good and he got the ball out on time, he looked good. There were just too many incidences of not looking good. I mean, would you agree? I mean, he expects more from himself.
Yeah.
Some of those easier throws.
Yeah. What confuses me, and we saw it all throughout the preseason, especially in the Packers game, and well, maybe we didn't all see it because I went to 2 open practices that obviously were not broadcast, not everybody got to go to. They worked the screen game a lot in this preseason. They worked it a lot in the preseason, and when you've got a team that's getting in as fast as they're getting in and they're moving up on you, They didn't attempt a single screen pass yesterday, which was completely confusing to me. I was just floored, and it wasn't like they were pushing the ball downfield. I mean, he tried the aggressive throws early, but then it was just everything was kind of an out. It was kind of like a 10-yard out. Like, it was just weird.
10-yard out, right? We didn't look at the middle of the field very much, which we typically do. And people want to know where the middle of the field, the intermediate routes go. Well, if you're giving up pressure with 4 defensive linemen, then the linebackers can sit and make those intermediate throws nearly impossible. You got to get them up, over, down, and we couldn't hit those passes,
right?
Because we had all we could handle up front. So Josh is looking downfield because he knows he can't float it over these intermediate linebackers. Yeah. And we didn't control the line of scrimmage on the pass.
Yeah. It was just, for the life of me, I can't figure out what is. I said to Sterling Furrow, and I know you've been on Sterling's show, the Hoof podcast, once or twice, because Sterls was there. It was great to meet Sterls. And I said, if Josh, before the game, Josh Allen, we know who he is. We know that if it's 3rd and 22, the dude's firing the ball 25 yards downfield or 22 yards downfield, he's going to get it. If it's 3rd and 13, he's throwing the ball 14 yards downfield. Like, he's not afraid to be aggressive. And I said to Sterls, what we saw in preseason was amazing because he started to mature and kind of grow into that feeling, that feeling of, I have command of the whole field. And you know what? I'm going to take the short stuff if I need to. And he did it in preseason. And I remember saying to Sterling, he was sitting in the bed of my truck on my tailgate, I was like, if Josh Allen figures that out this year like he did in preseason, he's going to be unstoppable because you can't protect every inch of the green. And if he can go to any part of the green he wants, you're in trouble. And Sterling was like, that's it, man. He's just so smart, blah, 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 blah. And then yesterday happened, and we got back to the truck, and we were just like speechless.
Yeah, well, I mean, we gave it up front.
Right.
That's just the facts. Yep. So nice thing though, you saw a couple of throws by Josh where he wasn't even stepping into it. He was just flicking it 30 yards.
Yep.
The arm is there. And he was dejected after the game. I'll go back and look at it, but I would expect him to be.
Sure.
I mean, it's like a kiss me deadly, right? Like, you want him to be confident and angry, but at the same time, the fans are furious. Where do you walk the line on how long do I get to be upset and be disappointed in myself and my teammates?
Yeah, for sure. So the O-line, I said it wrong last night. I said that, or yesterday in the show, I said that they went around the horn, and it's actually hit the cycle. I was driving to work today. I was like, I said that wrong. I was like, they hit the cycle. I was like, you moron. And it's funny because we do these shows and you get caught in your thoughts, and it's like, you just get kind of trapped. But all of them but one had a holding penalty. Deion Dawkins had 3. And watching replays today on Twitter of what both Ingram was doing and TJ Watt was doing, and that doesn't even account for Hayward. They were spinning our offensive tackles in circles. Darrell Williams, who was put on an island last year against TJ Watt and succeeded, clearly struggled this time. Where do we start?
Well, I'll start with this. I mean, first of all, Pittsburgh's a prideful organization, they're coming in for the first game after a playoff loss. We ended their season last year. You think, you'd have been a little bit more ready than that. They weren't physical. I look at technique, and when I was reviewing plays last night, there's real technique issues in what I saw. And they weren't using their hands. They were letting both Ingram and Watt get into their bodies.
Yeah. Like
right into the body. And that's rule number 1 of pass protection. You got those big, long arms, use them. I don't know if there's fatigue issues, if there's conditioning issues, but Deion Dawkins looked like he was fatigued early.
Very much.
Williams wasn't moving very well. I think Cody Ford looks heavy-footed. Our man Mongo didn't play well. But by and large, what I look at, so my whole idea, you're a little bit, this might sound kind of weird, as a quarterback or a baseball pitcher, you're all about eliminating unnecessary motion. So as you're taking your set, as you're coming back, right? Joe Miller's coming right at me. I can see him. I got my target on that inside shoulder with my eyes. My hands are going to follow my eyes. But what I want to do is keep my hands kind of in this patty cake position.
Right.
Like, I don't need to punch from back here and do everything. All I need to do, it's like an 8 to 14 inch punch timed up nicely, and that just stops the guy enough. You go back and look, when they got beat, when they held, their arms were flying around.
Right.
Like Phoebe and friends jogging through Central Park. This is the harshest I hope I'll ever be. You know how I am. I
know. Yeah, for sure.
But this is a technique issue.
Yeah.
And it's real. So I don't know what's going on in practice. I don't know how they're working it, but those guys miss targets.
Well,
I coached Bruno, my son, for 4 years. I'm coaching Roman now as a freshman. Every offensive lineman, I tell, your eyeballs have to be on a target. You don't look at Joe's beautiful face. You find your target. You minimize any unnecessary motion, and you strike.
Right. What's interesting about what you just said about that is we watched it kind of happen with Spencer Brown. So Spencer Brown played in the Detroit game, and you texted me and said he had a little bit of a rough go. He let a lot of guys inside. I think you said he let some guys inside of his body when you and I talked about it. And then against the Bears game, he did exactly what you said against arguably one of the best linebackers in the NFL, Khalil Mack, and put Khalil right on his face. Khalil dipped his shoulders. He tried to go around him, and he just did what you said, kept his arms out and just pushed him straight to the ground, and it was over.
Oh, but Joe, the snowball effect of this. I mean, you put film up like that, with a variety of holding penalties, and what I think was pretty poor technique. And that, they get the film. I mean, Miami's like dying. They're coming in on Tuesday.
Right.
To look at that.
Yep.
And those defensive ends, I mean, imitation, highest form of flattery.
Yep,
what beats Dawkins? What beats Feliciano?
You're going to see a lot of spin moves. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, it's not just the spin moves. I mean, they got leveraged because, Ingram's a little shorter. TJ Watt, maybe just shorter than Williams on the right there. But they were getting their hands into the body, and our guys were huggy bearing
outside.
You can't survive like that. They're just, everybody's too strong now. Everybody's too explosive.
This is a great question from Troy Garman. Thanks for being a part of the show, Troy. Does John think changing the O-lineman on different series is bad for continuity? I don't know if you know this, but they were rotating 3 guys, obviously Feliciano, Ford, and then Butker. Do you feel that kind of throws guys, or is that spelling them good for them?
Nothing was good for them. I mean, look, I've been through that. The whole idea of rotating guys in like that is forcing guys to win and earn and maintain and own a position.
Right.
And none of that happened. I mean, Butker got 10 plays. Was that right?
I don't remember the number, but it wasn't. Yeah, probably.
It wasn't a lot of plays. I remember seeing him in there. I don't remember seeing anything where he looked like he was, guilty of allowing pressure or giving up a sack or something of that nature.
Right.
But, you read on the Twitterverse, this and that, they're reading their clippings. They think they're going to the Super Bowl already. Players don't think that way. They don't. And I don't think that those technique issues stem from, we think we're the greatest thing ever.
Yeah. This is great. Your guy, Jerry Ostrowski. They need to help their own by altering the snap count, John. This was a big thing that I talked to somebody about today. It got to the point where Ingram was jumping the snap because he knew there was twice I thought he was offsides and they didn't call it. So clearly he wasn't. He was all over whatever the cadence was that Josh was on yesterday.
Well, Jerry's 100% right. I let that out in the game. I tweeted that. I hate saying I tweeted that. It sounds so puerile, so childish. But I was sitting there like, where's the hard count? Jim Kelly was a master.
Oh, yeah.
Alex Van Pelt did it beautifully.
Yeah.
The clapping in college, I think, is ridiculous. I mean, it's hard enough to beat a guy with his ears pinned back when it's 3rd and long. Give me a hard count.
Right.
I mean, we're pretty efficient getting up to the line of scrimmage and getting set. I mean, come on, let's go on 2. We're adults here. This isn't an advantage that for some mysterious reason has been given up. Like, we're just going to go on 1. And when they were pinning their ears back, Jim Kelly would have gone on 3. We had code words for our hard counts. I'm sure Jerry will remember them, man. But, and there were things that I did, where the center would squeeze the ball a little bit on the second hard count or the first one. Give yourself a little bit of an edge. Jerry, old good friend of mine, great football mind, tough son of a bitch. That's a great point, Jerry. Thanks for coming on my show, Jerry.
It's funny because,
but Jerry, you got to admit that wouldn't have solved the problems that we saw, buddy. I mean, we saw some technique and straight physical things that the offensive line coach, I can't remember his name, I looked it up the other day. I mean, he's got to be pie-eyed right now. And when you're a coach, you look at things very, very plainly. Mm-hmm. I am either coaching you to do this or I'm allowing it to happen.
Right. What's interesting is you talked about the clap in college. And the first time I saw that, I think it was OSU. I was living in Columbus at the time. And I was like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I don't understand how every defensive lineman, how is that defensive coordinator's not telling them when you see him go like this, like get his hand out, because there's a cadence to it. They do it the same way every time. And when his hands are about to come in, go. But they don't, which is crazy to me. They don't key up, they don't tee off on it, they don't key on it or nothing like that. But yesterday the cadences, the counts, the hard counts was not there. And it was noticeable, and it was somewhat of a problem. But that offensive line, I think you talked about them getting into their bodies, and it got to the point, and McDermott talked about this because they asked him a question about why or something. How was it so effective that they were rushing 4, and a team that traditionally blitzes 80% of the time basically just stopped blitzing. Like they didn't even have to blitz. And McDermott responded with, I think sometimes it was 3. And that was when I said that he was dejected in that post-game presser. He was talking about the fact that they were getting through with 3. And I just don't. We talked last year, you and I did quite a bit about this offensive line. Pin and pull, wide zone. I believe they played some wide zone mostly yesterday. Clearly the stretch plays didn't work. Were you able to key in on what they were doing and why it wasn't working? Like, are they still trying to force a system on these guys? Have they just not found the system that works for these guys? Because it just wasn't great.
It wasn't great. I went on mute because I got a dog that I want to give away. Anybody want a dog? No, I don't mean that. Disclaimer. So I've been thinking about that a lot, right? I've been looking at Devin, Singletary, Zach Moss, Breida now. I think that when Zach Moss and Devin Singletary in the game, I think the pin and pull is a better play. I looked really closely at the body habitus of our offensive line, especially into the third quarter, and they look tired. And I don't think that zone blocking schemes, wide zone, are going to be beneficial for guys who, I don't know if they're out of shape. And you know what? Someone's going to say, hey, that jackass Fina says you're out of shape. And I could be wrong, but they looked like it. They look tired. So pin and pull, both the Devin Singletary runs, if you go back and look at them, one was straight power. The right guard pulled, kicked out, we created a seam, and Devin hit that little seam. I think he might like the idea that this is where the play hits, not here or here,
Right.
I don't know. I can't crawl inside of his head.
Right.
And the other play was a G scheme. The other Devin Singletary play to the left, G scheme, tackle blocks down, guard pulls around, kicks out the end, tight end knocks, released out to the support linebacker, found that seam, hit it hard and fast downhill. Now, Breida might be a guy who can float along a little bit more. Think Edgerrin James. I don't know how young our viewership is, and pick and find and wait for
patient. Le'Veon Bell would wait and be patient and find a hole and then squeak through it.
Yeah. I mean, I got to tell you, and with respect to if they are out of shape, then I think pin and pull is a better way to go. Because if you have 5 guys trying to take an edge and create a seam, exhaustion won't be your friend.
Right.
And the natural seam won't show up. Guys will just get beat. But if I can block down on a guy, step right foot, right hand, hip up field, seal, and if the end crashes, potentially it bounces. I think that might be more beneficial.
Somebody asked a question about just play calling, and obviously there was a lot of, in my opinion, questionable plays, which by and large, and it's true, if they're successful on those plays, then they're geniuses. However, there was inconsistency that I felt, at least for me, that I have not seen in this team and this coaching staff in a while, probably since 2019. Biggest case in point, one of the very first punts, I think it was the first punt, they were 4th and 3 inside, like in the whatchamacallit, in the opposing team
opportunity zone.
Yeah, the opposing team zone. They punt the ball. Later in the game, it's 4th and 8, and they go for it. 4th and 8.
I'll never fault you, Joe, for punting on 4th and 3, and I think you would agree with me. But on 4th and 8,
from the 41 though, 4th and 3 for the 41-42 though.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with a punt. If you think the wind is too strong, you're not going to kick it, then you punt it. Yeah. Again, so the same mindset that says punted on 4th and 3 should be the same mindset that says punted on 4th and 8. But you start overthinking it. Our defense is killing them, right? But if somebody had just whispered in your ear, you're going to get a block punt for a touchdown, you'd have punted.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. Well, that was 4th. I think that was 4th and 1 or 4th and 3, and obviously in their own end zone. I wouldn't.
But my point is, you don't go for it on 4th and 8. That's an unreasonable down and distance to go for it.
Yeah, no, right. That's what. And then the other one, 4th and 1, they decide to go for it on, and he throws a backwards pass. Gilliam, and I talked about this yesterday too. Gilliam looks up, and the guy that he's supposed to block isn't even there because he's already around him. And I just don't know what good comes from that. Yes, if he catches the ball, makes the first down, oh my God, what a play. But the reality is there's so many things that could, if it's not 3rd down, it's not 2nd down. If they run that play on 3rd down and he doesn't catch the ball and it drops in front of him, he falls on the ball, they punt it, right? 4th down, he falls on the ball, they get it right there. If he fumbles the ball, misses the ball, or Josh misses him completely, they're going to the end zone.
I want to poke my eyes out. I'm thinking to myself, we got a quarterback who everybody doesn't want to run anymore. But every time he runs, which was 6 or 7 times in the game for 44 yards or whatever the hell it was,
right.
Every designed run that Josh Allen ran gained yardage.
Right.
What the hell? Don't outthink him. Do what you do.
Do it. Let him be him. Yep.
So one of the points I came, this is hard-nosed Pittsburgh. They've historically been defensive monsters, right? I mean, that's hard-nosed play. Let's just play hard-nosed football.
Right.
That play was baffling. And I kept trying to think, well, maybe they were throwing it back to him and then they were going to drag somebody because it was a backward pass. And then I think about that. And then the flea flicker I'm okay with, right?
I liked it.
Everybody's like, oh, the flea flicker. But here's the deal on that. And you mentioned this last night. I was listening very closely to you, which should shock everyone.
It shocks me.
So here's the deal, right? You're going to run a flea flicker and release only one guy, Stephon Diggs, right? If you're going to do that, you're throwing the ball to one guy. That's it. That's your guy. So you need to understand, they had a safety at 17 yards, and they had a corner at about 8 yards. They should have had, and I blame this on Daboll, unless he coached it and Josh didn't do it. You walk up and see that and say, this is not flea flicker defense right now.
Right.
They need to be at 10 yards, right? Or 12 or 15. So let's just say this. If you're going to go ahead and run it, then Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen need to know that you only needed, 1 yard? Was it 1 yard?
1 yard. Yep.
1 yard. He ran the guys off like 30 yards and then tried to run an out. Mm-hmm. He could have ran them 15 or 20 and sprinted back and caught the ball at 5 yards.
Yep.
What are we doing here?
Yep.
I mean, read the defense. We always say, take what the defense gives you. They didn't give you the deep ball. They didn't give you the deep out. Come running back to the quarterback, make the catch and go, holy crap, we dodged a bullet on that one.
Yeah, that play, it was cool to watch that play develop from my seat from where I was, because it's on my side of the 50-yard line. And just to watch as I'm looking back and forth, and I said it yesterday, there's one guy in the pattern and he's double covered. And Allen caught it after the snap. He's like, oh, well, he's double covered and I got one guy out there. And he kind of shoulder hitched. And then that's when Diggs did that out. Diggs couldn't see him because he was running straight. And Diggs realized it too. I've got to get open. So that's when he cut to his left. And Josh tried to make the throw. And the recovery by the defensive back was magical. But
he was 2 seconds too late by the time he realized he needed to break it off.
Yes, for sure.
Right? And she should have stopped, turned, and ran back to the quarterback.
Yeah, I almost wonder if Josh was expecting that, because you could see on him that he was waiting for Diggs.
But again, I mean, you got to think when you're running a trick play, like they always say, you toss it out to the halfback and he's running out there. If the guy's not open, run out of bounds. Get what you can, right? Throw it out of bounds. So you have to look at a contingency, especially with one guy out running the route. I was kind of mind blown at that one.
Can you speak to urgency? Because there's
going to be a hell of a lot of urgency this week.
There just didn't seem to be a lot of urgency in the play calling, in the execution, especially in the last series. I talked about it again. They roll up to the line that there's 2:06 or 2:09 left on the clock going into the last 2-minute warning, and Josh snaps the ball a second after the clock expires, and he's like, "What happened?" Like and it was the whole game. There just wasn't a sense of. Last year we saw.
I wasn't paying attention to that. I think maybe on one play I thought, what the hell are they doing? Get up to the line. But they were, they got hit in the face with a wet frying pan. I think they were all a little shell-shocked.
Yeah, but you and Jerry both lived in the hurry-up offense, the K-gun. Mm-hmm. So you guys were on the line at 25 seconds, 24 seconds. And the Bills were consistently yesterday on the line at 24, 23 seconds. And then they were taking their time. Dable, I'm sure, was talking to Josh, telling him what he saw, yada, 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 just having conversation until the microphone got turned off. They'd snap the ball around 13. Even inside of a hurry up, you can be urgent in a hurry up and not urgent in a hurry up. They just didn't seem to have a sense of urgency to me.
Yeah, I honestly think that was just a residual mess left over from feeling like, holy cow, we just, we're getting absolutely embarrassed up front. Well, hey, I want to transition to the other positive, and this is sad. I mean, this is a positive though. I think there were no injuries.
No, that's huge. That's absolutely huge.
That's great for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, and I promised I'd comment on two things. So, TJ Watt. He doesn't get that strip sack if it's not for Cameron Hayward. That's just a fact, because Williams had him blocked on that play, but once Josh had to back out, it changes the angles. I don't know, how savvy our audience is, but once that quarterback steps off that 8-yard mark and goes backwards or back and left, that just changes the angle. And Williams, I mean, other than tackling him, holding him, TJ Watt was going to get there. But that's Cameron. They're right now, TJ Watt is like handing Cameron $100 bills saying thanks. And in the second sack, Josh was like doing that slow scramble across the formation. TJ Watt's an amazing player. I'm not trying to take anything away from TJ Watt. I'm just saying that Cameron Hayward is a stud. And we all know that. They
have studs on that. They got studs on that whole defense. Mika Fitzpatrick, Joe Hayden's a stud. I mean, obviously TJ Watt we've talked about. Melvin Ingram is on that. It's that defense is loaded. Levi Wallace. Talk to me about Levi Wallace a little bit. Bills Mafia's losing their mind. It was pass interference. I don't care what anybody says. It's
good. Lose your mind. I mean, how many DBs that are in the Hall of Fame have, not gotten their head around before?
All of them.
It's one play. We won the game. Nobody'd be talking about it.
Right.
And I did see he tripped on one late. It was in the fourth quarter. Ben threw it to the right, and he tripped and fell, and it was ugly. And Levi's not happy about it either.
Sure.
But it was a close call. I'd say it's 75% pass interference. If it didn't get called, I wouldn't have really been surprised either. It happens. Jeez, it happens.
For sure.
Look, the defining moment of the game is the punt block for a touchdown. You take that away, it changes everything.
Did you see Sale's tweet?
The whole scope of the game.
Did you see Sale's tweet today just about that? As far as there was the digital design of like where all the players went.
I did. I thought he did a nice job.
Yeah.
With the digitalis there.
Yeah.
The punter, it was 25% the punter, 75% the interior blocking. You block punt from inside out.
Right.
And everybody uses the same damn punt formation. Everybody uses the same philosophy. You protect from the inside out. And I saw somebody said, "Oh, well, the center's got to pick somebody up." No, they don't do that anymore. If the snapper gets a hand on somebody, that's just bonus, right?
Right.
Forget it. That's like, hey, they give you an extra beer because they poured one. Thank you.
Right. What's funny is I noticed the hitch in his step immediately, but it wouldn't have mattered had he caught that ball clean, 1-2-3'd it or 1-2'd it. That dude still would have been in his lap Still would
Yeah,
have been,
but it may not have gone for a touchdown. We might have
right,
been able to line up and play defense.
right. But
It was poor kicking.
yeah,
And
I mean,
you know what? You let Bajorquez go, and the other guy, I don't know. I mean, not to say that Bajorquez wouldn't have got it blocked, but
before,
again, I mean,
go ahead.
well, back to Levi Wallace, right?
Yep.
So you get the penalty. Everybody's crying, CB2. I mean, we improved in the draft. We improved in free agency. We got the guys. We kept the guys we wanted. You know, at some point you realize teams win Super Bowls with a few guys that, you know, you just think are serviceable players. But I still think Levi's even a little better than that. And you look at the touchdown that was scored on him. That was the play after the run play.
It was an amazing catch.
He tipped it.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. He got his hand up and he tipped it.
Yep.
And then, you know, 95, 98 times out of 100, that ball gets tipped away. The receiver's falling. He can't make the grab. And it was a brilliant play.
Yeah, that one, it was almost like it was just meant to be. Like that, that was an amazing catch. Before we transition to where do we go from here, which I'm excited for that. And then obviously we're going to be done because we're almost at an hour already. This has been fun conversation for me. Just fantastic. You've been in the locker room as a player coming into week one in both what I would consider a high expectation team, right? Great expectations on this team. We're coming into week one. We did the preseason game thing. I was at, I'm sure, the last year that you guys won the Super Bowl when, you know, I remember specifically you guys would one series straight down the field, score a touchdown off the field. I was there for those preseason games. Is there a difference in the mindset of the players when there's high expectations coming into week one versus, you know what, we're not a good football team. We kind of know we're not a good football team. We're going to do the best we can. And we're coming into week one. And is it good or bad? Because you hear all this bulletin board material stuff. Now they're going to be mad and they're going to be mad at themselves. And then you hear other people that are professional saying if a player needs to have bulletin board material to be pumped up for a game, then they're in the wrong game. Like they should be able to self-motivate. Where does your conscience lie and from your experience on that type of stuff?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, nobody in Bills Mafia is more upset than the players, especially the guys that played poorly. Look, I'm not. If Feliciano and Dion and Williams were in front of me right now, it's like, guys, you know, if I were their coach, they're going through the ringer right now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because they have high expectations. It's like you said, you know, I've been on teams that were horrible, where I knew that the only way we would have won is if the other team's bus crashed. You know, we're not that team. But that doesn't mean that you lay off them in practice. That doesn't mean you say, you know, this is where you're supposed to play. This is what we saw, dude. What's going on?
Right.
Yeah, and look, historically, two teams have had a perfect season, right? The Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots, even though they lost the Super Bowl. Perfect regular season, I should say.
Yep.
We went to the Super Bowl. We lost to the Raiders in L.A. my rookie year. They were terrible. I mean, that was ugly. I think we had a punt blocked.
Mm-hmm.
It was awful. But, you know, then we beat some teams who are really great football teams.
Yeah.
The guys right now are saying we're destined for more of this. We need to play to our potential. And that's the beauty of football is, you know, 11 guys on the field. And you need to suck it up every play. You know, Cornelius Bennett and Bruce Smith used to say this a lot. Don't look for somebody else to make a play. You make your play every time, and then you're the guy making the play.
Right. That's good.
You know, don't wait for somebody else to do it.
Yeah, super good. I'm excited about the fact that this was one game, and the reality is we have 16 left, which means for all of us that have been watching football for a long time, we've got a full season left. My expectation for the season has not changed. I still think the Bills go 13-4. From a where do we go from here? What do they got to do to prepare for this Miami game? I think they're going to come out like a bunch of, I mean, because you said play hard-nosed football. I think you can still do that. Doesn't mean run. I think you can still play smash mouth football with the pass. You're just dictating to the other team. This is what we do. This is what we're going to do. And you're going to take it. And then we're going to get off the field with a W. Where do we go from here, in your opinion?
Well, Yeah, there's always a concern about grass. So, did the guys practice enough on grass as opposed to AstroTurf during the preseason, getting their footing? Some of the guys, running backs, you can't cut on your inside foot to your right or left.
Right.
You got to cut on your outside foot, things of that nature. If the defense plays Sunday like they did today, we're going to be in a very, very close game. If we eliminate one turnover, which is curious, we talk about it being a turnover, but it was for a touchdown.
Right.
That's like a pick six, right? Clean up the special teams. It's nice to not have any turnovers, but overcome the one that you're going to have. And the offensive line has to play better, Joe. They have to play better.
They got to figure it out.
They rushed with 4 and 3 yesterday. They were able to drop the linebackers in the intermediate zones, which means you're only working the outside of the field, which is longer throws. And, nobody game plans and says we're only going to work the outside thirds of the field, right?
Definitely not Lamar Jackson, who can't find the outside thirds of the field.
Well,
hey, we got a couple minutes.
I'm optimistic.
So am I, very much so. I don't think this is not going to define the season. It actually may. The Bills lost that heartbreaker against the Cardinals last year, and it sent them on a trajectory where they weren't going to take crap from anybody for the rest of the season, and they didn't until obviously the AFC Championship game.
What we say a lot in a loss like this is forget about the game, remember the feeling.
Oh, that's good.
Right? Yeah, the feeling is what will motivate you to make the changes in your performance.
Yeah, very good. You got a couple minutes. See if anybody's got any questions. Can you stick around for a couple minutes here? See if anybody. Yeah.
Look, it's only like 7:00 out here. Look, I have all these notes.
So if you've got a question for John, roll it in here real quick. I'm gonna work back through a couple just to see if I can find them. Mike Stock says he's wondering why they didn't move the pocket a bit more, rollouts, etc. It seemed like Josh was kind of anchored in there and didn't have as much success. I agree with this. That he didn't have as much success.
That's not really our game, is it?
Yeah, but normally he escapes. But no, they don't do a moving pocket. That's true. But it just felt like he didn't have the ability to escape.
Well, that's why he didn't escape. Nowhere to run to, nowhere to hide.
Nowhere to run to, baby.
Are we singing on this show?
Nowhere to hide.
How many offensive line holding penalties?
I believe it was 6 or 7. Was it 6?
5, maybe. 3, 2. I don't know.
4 of them got one.
If you get 5 holding calls, then the other plays, probably could have been opportunities for holding calls. They were getting punked up front.
Right.
It was not good.
Yeah.
So he couldn't escape. Or maybe that's part of the new Josh, to stay in there a little bit longer and wait. But you got to protect up front. It all starts with protection. When you consider going back to what I was talking about, you got to be in shape, man. Pass pro is so much harder on offensive linemen than run blocking. And
right.
It's actually an inverse relationship. It's more tiring to pass block, and it's less tiring for the defense to rush. When you're beating them with the run game, their arms, like they can't even lift their arms after a while. So you got to be fit.
That's good.
More questions? What do you got?
Sean Matter asks, do you think playing with actual crowd noise played a role in what we saw yesterday? Clearly, he's speaking of the offense.
No. I never really even heard the crowd until the last couple minutes of a home game. They don't hear the crowd. I don't think there were nerves going on. I just think they played poorly. Sometimes you play poorly.
Yeah. Do you buy into this whole Sugar High Josh thing? I know he's come out and said that he gets a little too amped up, needs to get hit. And there was a play. It was in the second series. No, because they had the 71-yard return and then they went 3 and out and kicked a field goal. I think they had another series. And then there was a series after that where he just out of nowhere kind of took off on a scheduled or unscheduled run. And it looked like he was just trying to get hit. It looked like somebody please hit me to get me unrattled. Do you feel like there was some first game jitters in there somewhere?
Well, if that's the case, I'll come to every locker room pregame and do it in the locker room in a safe environment where, I'll just smack him. It could be, that's almost akin to, I put my right leg into my pants before my left leg.
Right.
If that's the case, you better tame that beast, because we can't have you looking to hit somebody before. And if that were the case, he wouldn't have sprinkled some poor throws throughout the entire game. They probably would have all come up front, right?
One last thing, and Mike Stock brings this up. I wonder if having Moss active and Singletary inactive would have been a better call. I don't think that's the right call. What do you read into Zach Moss not being active in this football game?
I don't read anything into it. I don't know.
You weren't surprised at all? We were floored. When that came through that Moss was inactive, we were like, healthy scratch? Because he seems to be, I don't want to use the word bell cow, because out of a team that rushes the ball 10 times in a game, but he seems to be the bell cow. At least.
Okay, well, it could be Breida fit better into some part of the game plan that we never got to see because we didn't play well enough to see it.
Right.
So, I think Zach and Singletary are more closely related in skill set than Zach and Breida or Devin and Breida. Right. So if you want to add some sort of a variety, then maybe Devin sits the next time. I'm not concerned about that. I don't think that Zach being in and Devin being out would have changed the outcome of this game.
Yeah.
What would have changed the outcome of this game was, 5 fewer holding penalties and not a block punt for a touchdown. Let's keep focusing on that. And I think Bills Mafia, anybody out there who thought we were just going to breeze through the season and it wasn't going to be, tough games, like we had tough games last year. We won a lot of games. We're close. Would you agree?
Yeah, there was one point, and I can't remember who said it to me. I was talking to a buddy today that said that with all the holding penalties, there was the one drive where they kept getting a first down, getting knocked back 10 yards, getting a first down, getting knocked back 10 yards. And it's like, we've gained 150 yards on this drive already, and we haven't made it to the end zone yet.
It was brutal. It was our second possession.
Yeah, killing any type of momentum that we
had on the third play it was a holding. On the 6th, 7th play it was a free guy. 2 plays later it was a holding on Morse, which I thought was weak. That was a weak call. Yeah. And then the last play before the punt was a hold.
Last question that I have for you: how impossible is it, or improbable is it, or unlikely, or pick a word that is less or strong in there, is it for an offensive line, 5 men, with 4 of them being rookies, never having played together, not get a single holding penalty in an entire football game?
Well, and I found 2 when I watched the film, and that's the nauseating thing. And if Jerry O's still on the phone right now, I mean, that's like, if you're going to call 5 or 6 on one side of the ball, be equal in your diligence about finding things. There were 2 shameful, one particularly on Hughes that I thought was just sad. And, somehow they got to figure, like, hey, guys, we're not calling this thing fair. We're not calling it straight. Offensive line holds on every play. I thought that was a little pathetic, frankly.
Yeah. Gotcha. Josh McCarty asked, do you think that the 30 pounds of John Feliciano lost this offseason has hurt his ability to play to his strengths, which he is the tone setter. He's the guy that's the bruiser, the beater, the guy that gets in there and, grinds a little bit.
No, I don't think so. I mean, the 2 plays that I thought were his most egregiously poor performances were his feet. He's got those long arms and he likes to extend them, but he gave up the inside. It wasn't really about strength or size. It was about movement. And that was the problem at the tackle position too. They weren't moving very well.
Yeah, lead feet, a little bit of lead feet going on. John, any final thoughts for us this evening before we let you go and to enjoy the rest of your evening? And those of us on the East Coast can either watch the rest of the football game or go to bed.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you this, and I think you're the same way. We can be angry as fans. I can be angry as an alumni, but we can avoid being vitriolic.
Yes.
We don't have to hit the panic button right now. There's no reason to panic. If you want to call it a wake-up call, if you want to call it a reset, then you got it, right? Let's give these large men a chance to do the things that they do, which most people on the planet couldn't even begin to perform. And let's enjoy it a little bit and understand that we got to take our losses. How about you? What's your final thought there, Joe?
Same exact thing. I said coming into the season this year to just knowing what Josh Allen is, who he is, what this offense is, to not do what I did, and you've heard me say it as well as a little kid, and not really pay attention or savor all those moments that I had with Jim Kelly as a fan, like taking everything, taking the touchdowns, taking the wins, taking the losses, taking the struggles, and see the overcome and the success on the opposite side, because before you know it, you blink, and you can speak to this too. I'm sure it's over. Like you blink and it's done, and then it's 17 years of quarterback purgatory with a bunch of names that we don't want to remember. That we don't want to remember. You know what I mean?
And this is a special week too. I mean, of all the teams that I played over the years, my least favorite team is the Miami Dolphins, and the spread between them and number 2 is vast.
For sure.
And that I hope lives on despite the drought and the pain and the suffering that we've gone through for 2 decades. The Dolphins, I just despise them. I don't know. I can't get it out of my system. So let's gear up. Let's keep the faith. Let's be positive, and let's squish in the fishin'.
Love it. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have been watching and listening to, because this is going to drop in podcast form every Tuesday morning going forward, and we'll be on every single week throughout the season with John Fina. And I didn't mention this to you. The Monday night games that we have, we could potentially go early and go a pregame show depending on what time like your schedule works or so, which might be kind of fun if we hit the air at 7 or 7:30. Right, so kind of like a pregame show. So something food for thought, which is actually a Bruce Nolan show on Friday, but still that phrase works here. But
chef, yeah, let's let's keep it fluid. I'm willing. I really, again, I mean, thanks for bringing me back to
dude,
and being excited.
Yeah, dude. But ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching the Off Tackle with John Fina show on the Buffalo Rumblings multicast vidcast network. It's great to have you guys on board. We'll see you guys next week on Monday at 9 o'clock. I'm Joe Miller. That's John Fina. Go Bills.
Go Bills, baby.
Go